Our story begins in ancient Israel, a time when the Israelites were oppressed by a powerful enemy, the Philistines. For 40 years, the Philistines ruled over Israel, and the people cried out to God for deliverance. In the small town of Zorah, there lived a man named Manoah and his wife. They had no children and often prayed for God to bless them with a child. One day, the angel of the Lord appeared to her and said,
"Do not be afraid. Though you have been barren, you will conceive and give birth to a son. He will be a Nazirite, set apart for God. You must never cut his hair, and he must avoid wine and unclean foods, for he will be the one to begin saving Israel from the Philistines."
Excitedly, she ran to tell her husband the good news. Manoah prayed to the Lord, asking him to send the angel again to teach them how to bring up the boy. God heard Manoah's prayer, and the angel returned when they were in the field. Manoah asked the angel, "When your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work?" The angel repeated the instructions Manoah's wife must follow. Then Manoah took a young goat and grain offering and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. Just as the angel promised, a baby boy was born, and they named him Samson. From a young age, Samson was no ordinary child. God had given him great strength and a special purpose to help free Israel from their oppressors. As Samson grew, so did his strength. But his strength wasn't just physical. He was also bold and full of passion, sometimes a bit reckless. And that combination would lead him into some interesting situations. One day, Samson went down to Timnah, and there he saw a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, "I have seen a woman in Timnah, a Philistine. She's the one I want to marry. Get her for me."
Samson, isn't there a woman among your own people? Why must you go after a Philistine, our enemy?
Get her for me. She's the one I want.
Unknowing to his parents, God was using this situation to create a conflict with the Philistines, setting the stage for Samson's journey as Israel's defender. On his way to meet the woman in Timnah, Samson was attacked by a lion. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and with his bare hands, Samson tore the lion apart as if it were nothing, a testament to the strength God has given him. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Later, when he returned along that same road to marry the Philistine woman, he found honey inside the lion's carcass, left by a swarm of bees. He took some honey, eating it as he walked. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they too ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the lion's carcass. During the wedding feast, Samson decided to test his 30 Philistines' companions with a riddle. "Let me tell you a riddle," Samson said to them. "If you can solve it within the 7 days of the feast, I'll give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you can't solve it, you owe me the same." "Tell us the riddle," they said. Then he replied, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." The Philistines were stumped. For days they tried to figure out the answer, but could not. Finally, they turned to Samson's new wife and said,
"Trick your husband into telling you the answer, or we'll burn you and your father's household. Did you invite us here to steal our property?"
Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing.
You hate me. You don't really love me. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer.
I haven't even explained it to my father or mother, so why should I explain it to you?
She cried and cried and cried. So on the 7th day, he finally told her, because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson said to them, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle." Enraged, Samson went down to the town of Ashkelon, where he struck down 30 Philistine men, taking their clothes to pay his debt. Burning with anger, he returned to his father's home. And Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who had attended him at the feast. Later on, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, "I'm going to my wife's room." But her father would not let him go in. "I was so sure you hated her," he said, "that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." Filled with a desire for vengeance, Samson said, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. When the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" they were told, "Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion." So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Samson said to them, "Since you've acted like this, I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you." He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The people of Judah asked, "Why have you come to fight us?" "We have come to take Samson prisoner," they answered, "to do to him as he did to us." Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us?" He answered, "I merely did to them what they did to me." They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." "Agreed," they answered. "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. The ropes on his arms became like linen that has been burnt, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said,
With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men.
When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Lehi. Then Samson was very thirsty, and he called out to the Lord and said, "You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. So the spring was called En Hakore. One day, Samson went to Gaza. where he met a beautiful woman. He went in to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, "At dawn we'll kill him." But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with the 2 posts, and tore them loose. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Some time later, Samson fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said,
See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength, and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver.
So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him,
"Samson, the Philistines are upon you."
but he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." Then Samson said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then, with men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Samson, "All this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with the pin. Again she called to him.
"Samson, the Philistines are upon you."
He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her everything. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and his strength left him. Then she called,
"Samson, the Philistines are upon you."
He awoke from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him to grinding grain in the prison. Samson had lost everything, but in his lowest moment, he remembered God. Slowly, his hair began to grow back. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god and to celebrate, saying, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands." When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson whispered a prayer to the Almighty God. "Lord God, remember me. Strengthen me just once more, so I may avenge myself on the Philistines." In one final act of strength, he pushed with all his might and said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Then his brothers and his father's whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. He had led Israel 20 years. Samson's story teaches us about the power of faith, the consequences of choices, and God's mercy, even when we fall. Through his life, we have seen that God can use even flawed and broken people for his glory. Our past failures don't disqualify us from being part of his plan. We are also reminded that our choices, whether good or bad, will have consequences.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Press the notification bell to get notified when we upload new videos. Like and share the link with your family and friends.